What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, talk about some very important levels to watch for tomorrow, and talk about how on earth the charts are looking so far. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 6 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the overall market. So looking at the market, we ended up hitting this very important support at 433, and we had a bullish divergence on SPY. It looked like it was about to play out, but this ended up failing. And as a result of that, SPY is starting to look very, very weak. We look even weaker than before. Now, SPY is at critical support at 431, but the question is, will we try to bounce off this as we have a bullish divergence, or will we end up breaking down? So I'm going to break this down going into the future. I'm going to talk about all of this in just a few minutes, but I want to first talk about a couple of other things. Jerome Powell and the Fed have come out and they've made the announcement that they're likely going to continue to raise rates, and they may have to keep rates higher for a longer period of time. Now, by doing so, this caused the market to end up shaking very, very hard, leading to this massive sell off. So the question is, will the market try to bounce, or is the market almost done doing so? Now, we have some PMI data coming out 15 minutes after the market opens. This could cause some volatility as we have some manufacturing and services data. So watch for that 15 minutes after the market opens. But besides that, as of right now, we have another big factor, and that is this right here. We have a lot of puts expiring. We have a 2.22 put to call ratio with 442 being max pain. And the market makers, if I was one of them, I would be incentivized to try to push the market up closer to max pain, if anything, because we have about 695 calls expiring in the money and over 392,000 out of the money. And we have a ton of puts expiring, and they'd have to pay out a lot of those premiums. So what they tend to do is want us to close very close to max pain. So the market makers do give the markets an incentive to try to like balance a bit, but I can't make any promises as the market is still looking weak at the time I'm recording this. Now, part of the reason why for that is because when you look at these different indicators, fear is continuing to drive the markets. Market volatility is fearful, and the overall sentiment right now is quite fearful as fear is causing the market to sell off. But the question is, will the market bounce from here? Is the market going to sell off? Here's my answer. Guys, the truth is, we are looking very, very weak on SPY at the time I'm recording this. We've been selling off like crazy with almost no significant bounce, and the market is looking very weak. However, SPY is at critical support very close to 431. And then below that, if we continue to break, there is going to be another important support below that. So what am I seeing on the chart right now? We look bearish so far, but we do have a bullish divergence trying to develop at this current place. Now, this tells me that there could be a bounce coming, but it's either going to come sometime during like the intraday time frame on Friday, if not by Monday. And I don't know exactly when it's going to come. Now, we're going to be watching this 431 zone. If we end up breaking and holding below 431 tomorrow, we're going to be watching SPY come all the way down to about the 429s. And then we may make an attempt to see some buyers step in at 429. If we end up getting a bounce immediately, then SPY can make its way back up to 433. As of right now, we're looking pretty weak, so it looks like we may be on our way down to like 429 before getting some kind of bounce. And if this bullish divergence remains, then there is a chance the market may bounce off that. But if we invalidate this divergence, then the market could continue to sell off pretty aggressively. The market is very scared, very fearful, and for there to be a bounce, it could be delayed depending on how much we sell off. All right, so right now it's looking like the odds favor us dropping a little bit lower than expected, and then the bounce may be a little bit delayed, and this divergence may continue to develop. I think the bounce could be delayed intraday, but we could see more downside on SPY, and we may see it get very close to 429. It is looking very weak, and as of right now, there's no sign of a bounce. Tesla is at critical support right now. It's continuing to sell off pretty aggressively, still looking very weak. I was hoping this thing was about to bounce. I think that we had the potential looking at the bullish divergence that developed, but it ended up being a failed bounce, and that ended up being a very significant failed attempt. So now Tesla's at this key support. On the 4-hour time frame, Tesla has the 200 EMA to be bouncing off of. If we bounce off this red line, this 200 EMA, Tesla could make its way back up to 260. If we break below it, we're going to come all the way down to fill the gap towards 249. What is looking more likely, in my opinion? The answer is Tesla's looking very weak. It looks like it's just barely holding the support. And it looks like it's not going to get much of a bounce. The signals of the bounce are just like they were very premature, and they ended up being a very, very tiny bounce that failed. I made a video about that earlier. I was telling you guys that there might be a bounce coming, but I think that it's a little bit early, and I do apologize for that. I think that it's going to take a little bit longer now, and it looks like Tesla may be on its way down to lower levels. It's looking very weak. So we could see 250 on Tesla, maybe even like the very high 240s before this thing ends up getting the bounce. It's still looking very, very weak, and the full measured move from this head and shoulders could bring it all the way down towards this into the high 240s. So we could see the 240s on Tesla before we bounce. It looks more bearish right now. But just for confirmation, okay, even though it does look more bearish, we're going to be watching this 200 EMA. If we bounce off this, we could see 260 plus. If we break below it, then that's going to be our confirmation of more downside. As of right now, it looks more probable that Tesla breaks below that trend line. Looking at the IWM, this is looking weaker at 177. If that breaks, we're likely going to come up towards 175. If we bounce, 178 is on the table. As of right now, it looks more bearish, so be very careful. We could drop a little bit more before the bounce ends up coming, so be very, very mindful of that. Apple is looking very weak on the 4-hour and also on the daily chart, so it looks like there could be more downside. 173.5 is a key support. We've bounced off this many times in the past. If Apple hits 173.5 and bounces off of that, we could see it try to get back to 175. If we break below 173.5, I think it's going to come all the way down towards the 171s. What looks more probable is the fact that on the daily chart, we look very weak. We have this very, very big rejection candle that formed, and it looks a little bit more bearish on the daily chart. So the odds do favor downside for Apple. But just to be safe, watch 173.5 for confirmation. That's going to determine which way this thing ends up going. Now, on Apple, we did have a bullish divergence, but there's no sign of this truly playing out. There was a fake bounce that ended up failing, and Apple failed to get that bounce today. I was hoping that this would be it, but that's actually not the case. So we're going to be watching this very carefully, and we're going to be seeing if this ends up being a real bounce. So watch 173.5. If we bounce, Apple could push for 175. If not, 171 is coming. The QQQ is currently just barely holding 357. That's where we have some support. This is a key support. We have a bullish divergence developing, but there's no sign of it truly bouncing just yet. So this tells me two possibilities. If the QQQ ends up breaking below 357, we're going to be watching for 354 tomorrow. If we bounce off this, then 360 is a possibility. Now, what do I think is more likely? As of right now, we're looking very, very weak on the chart. It looks very weak. Looks like we could see 354 tomorrow and then see some buyers step in. But as of right now, I just want to be open-minded. So watch 357 and see how we end up reacting to that. We're still looking quite weak. Unfortunately, Nvidia is breaking this key support. We have a bullish divergence that's in the process of developing, but it could be invalidated if we keep on selling off. As of right now, I mean, if we bounce off this level, we could see it try to get back above 410 and then make its way up to like 418, but that's looking very difficult, and this thing is continuing to look weaker. As we're continuing to sell off, it looks like we could be retesting 403. That's going to be a very key level on the 4-hour time frame. 403 could be tested towards this imbalance. Nvidia is looking very weak. And unfortunately, we didn't get a bounce off the bullish divergence. The bullish divergence is still developing, so it's not ready yet. It looked like it was about to do so, but it ended up failing. So it's in the process of developing this for a bounce. We could get very close to 400 before we get that bounce. It's still looking quite weak, and we're going to see if support holds. Microsoft is looking bearish. This thing has there was technically a bullish divergence that developed, but there's no sign of it playing out just yet. It could be in the process of developing, and this thing could just continue to sink while it develops before the bounce ends up coming. It looks like it could end up retesting 316 as it's continuing to look weak in the after hours. If that fails us, the next support to be watching for is going to be very close to that 315.35 level, then 311.5. Microsoft looks more bearish. It's just continuing. It just failed to get much of a bounce. 315 or below that could be coming. And then we're going to be watching to see if buyers step in around there. AMD, I mean, this thing had a bullish divergence, ended up failing as well. If this continues to sell off, I can see this thing get very close to this 92.5 area. This is still looking more bearish. And then it could try to bounce off that, if not by 90. Now, one thing that is important, though, is for the market, okay, even though the market has a little bit more downside potential, it could still try to bounce because the VIX has technically a bearish divergence that has been developing, but there's no sign of the VIX rejecting just yet for me to make that claim. If the VIX ends up rejecting because of this bearish divergence, then we could see the VIX cool off because of the market bouncing. So there's a possibility of a bounce intraday tomorrow, but no guarantees just yet because there's no sign of it just yet, right? So it could happen tomorrow, but right now I can't make a call because I don't have the trust for tomorrow just yet. So the VIX is developing a signal suggesting that it's going to sell off soon, but there's no sign of it happening just yet. It may take a day or two for it to play out. So I think that by Friday or Monday, the VIX is going to start selling off and the market should bounce, but I don't know for sure just yet which day it's going to be. And as of right now, the VIX is still holding up. So we're just going to be waiting to see how that plays out. On the dollar index, this thing came down, but this thing is trying to rebound after forming this very, very nice bounce of 105.25 or around that zone. It's at resistance, it's very flat, so this is not really telling us too much. Google is looking a little bit weak. We're kind of in the middle, but kind of weak. Google ended up continuing to sell off. We actually broke towards 131, and it looks very, very weak right now. If you look at the 4-hour time frame, no true sign of a bounce just yet. If we end up breaking below 131, we could see 129. I'm sorry, 130, then 129. And then we're going to be watching to see if buyers step in there, but it's looking a little weak. It looks like it could break below. Amazon is continuing to sell off. We failed to get that bounce off 129. For that reason, it could be approaching this key support right here. I was looking at this imbalance. If 128 ends up failing as support, 126.5 is a real possibility. So we're going to be watching that very, very carefully. That's going to be a very, very key level. We're going to be watching to see if we get a bounce there or not. Finally, for Meta, okay, Meta is a very, very important stock right now. 192, I'm sorry, 292 is where we have support. So we're going to be watching to see if Meta could bounce off that or not. If we end up breaking, I think we're going to test 292 tomorrow. If that fails us, then 290 is coming. The market is still looking weak. There's no true significant sign of a bounce just yet. So we're going to be watching to see how this ends up developing. And Tesla's looking a little weaker now. I think Tesla might break below the 200 EMA. That's not a very good sign. It's looking like it may come all the way down to 250 before getting or even like the high 240s before we get any kind of bounce. So unfortunately, it is what it is. Tesla failed off the bullish divergence, so it happens. But as of right now, we're just going to watch the chart carefully, and we're going to be watching to see how this reacts. So Tesla's looking very weak now. It's starting to break down. So just watch this all carefully and just know that there is some more downside potential. Anyways, thank you all for listening. Hopefully this video was helpful about how the market may move. Even though we have some bullish divergences developing, there's no sign of them playing out just yet. So we shouldn't assume they're going to play out yet. There was a fake out where it looked like they were about to, but they ended up failing. So just watch it all very carefully, do what you have to do, and I will see you guys very soon for the next video. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning before the PMI report comes out. And until then, I just thank you all for listening. I really want to appreciate everyone that's out there. So have a great day, everyone. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.